Hi guys, today I'm doing a quick video update on the clay that I use, the homemade clay that I use on the interior of the gnome home. I'll take you on the inside here. The exterior walls are all my homemade bark. That's tinfoil, tape, and then paper towel dipped in glue. I have more about that on my blog. And then the interior walls are all covered in a homemade clay, and it makes the room very sturdy. So when you're doing a huge project like this house here is 5'6" to the top of the roof, down to the bottom of the platform that it's standing on. There's about 16 or more rooms. I haven't done an official count lately. So this is a huge project. So if you're doing a project like this, then making a homemade clay is probably a good idea. I use it all the time. I also use it when I'm making little guys like this. This is my troll Louie. He is foil, and then he's covered in the homemade clay, and he's got a pretty cool texture to him. And then my rats and my mole and my other little creatures also are tinfoil, and then I cover it in the same clay that I use on the interior walls, and then a homemade flocking over that. I love it. Super cheap to make and very easy to make as well. I'm going to take you over to Nomi's room. So here I'm on the other side. This is Nomi's new room. Same thing, exterior is my fake bark, and then the interior is all that homemade clay. And then once it's completely dry, then you paint it, and I always like to put a coat of clear coat over top of that. It gives a nice finished look to it. So it's got a nice texture. I love that clay. So now I'm going to take you to the kitchen and show you how I make it in my kitchen sink. Here's my fresh clay here, just made this morning. This will last in your fridge about 2 to 3 weeks before it goes moldy, so you'll want to use it up before then. And what I made today makes about a half a pail, ice cream pail full. My YouTube video that I have up on this clay is a couple years old now, and I've changed some things since then. This is about half the amount that I used to make, and then if you need more, just make up another batch. When you're all done making the clay, everything is water soluble, so just use hot water and soap, and it can go down your drain. So you'll probably recognize all the ingredients that I use in the clay except for the compound that I talk about and the insulation. So I'm going to show you both of those. And do you know those drywall sheets that they put in brand new homes? And to cover up the seams, they put this stuff over top of that. And then they sand it down and then they paint it. And then you can't see the seams. That's what this stuff is here. I get it at the local hardware store. This big jug here probably cost me, I don't know, about $14, $15. So I used that, and now I'm going to show you the paper insulation. So here I'm out in my shed, and here's the insulation here. This is a huge bag. I bought this, I can't remember, 2 or 3 years ago, and I've just barely put a dent into it. So I'll probably be using it for another couple years. It's all recycled paper materials. Lots of dust comes off of there, so use a mask when you use it. I opened the bag upside down, so I have to do this upside down. Weather shield, insulation. There's no asbestos or glass fibers, so it's not dangerous, but you still don't want to have all that dust going into your lungs, so make sure you wear a mask. Great big bag. I think it cost me about $14, maybe a little less. Alright guys, I just finished mixing up the ingredients before I stick in the paper insulation. I'm just stopping to show you. This is about the consistency of very light pancake batter. Very light. It doesn't have to be exact. I don't want you to worry about exact amounts and what this looks like. Whatever you do to it, it's going to turn out, so I wouldn't worry about it. In here is about 3 cups of flour, give or take. There's about 3 tablespoons of salt. Salt's very important to cut down any chances of mold. I have never, not once, had an issue with mold in this clay. Not ever, so make sure you use the salt. There's about a big scoopful of drywall compound, probably more than the recipe calls for, and I like using more compound than I used to because I find it makes a nicer clay. There's about half a cup of tacky glue, a cup full of liquid cornstarch that I make myself. Again, that's more than the recipe calls for. I just didn't want to waste the other half, a cup that I had, and I wouldn't use it for anything. So I just take a tablespoon of this powder, cornstarch, put it into a cup full of hot water and mix it up. Throw it in the pan, bring it to a boil, whisk it so there's no lumps, and then pour it in here. And what else is in there? Oh, to cut down the odor of the cornstarch, you want some Mr. Clean or something like it. This stuff smells nice. I put about 2 cupfuls in there, give or take. And water. I use hot water. And again, I didn't measure out. I just poured it in there and from my tap. And I think there's, I don't know, 3 or 4 cups of hot water. I couldn't tell you. You just want to have a consistency of light pancake batter. Okay, so now I've mixed all that up. And I'm going to stick in the paper insulation now. And this is the other thing that I do differently. On my first video I made, I would only mix this so far with my hand mixer, and then I would mix it by hand. Now I don't do that. I just let my mixer do the whole thing. I let it do the whole thing, and then it's easier on me. I think the reason why we didn't do the whole thing with the mixer before is because we were worried about burning out the hand beater, this thing here. But I have a second hand beater I got at the thrift store. I think it was $5. So I have nothing to lose here, really. So you don't want to use a real fancy beater, of course, just in case it does burn out the motor. But if you have a cheap hand mixer that you've gotten at the thrift store, let it do all the work for you. So you can see I'm not measuring this out, I'm just sticking it in there. And use a mask and see all that dust coming off of there. You don't want that going into your lungs. So I'm just going to push it down first, get it wet so it doesn't fly away when I start the hand mixer up. Okay, so that is way too wet, so I'm going to stick in more insulation, and I keep adding insulation little bits at a time, mix it up, add some more, mix it up until I have the consistency I want. So I'm going to show you on film, of course, until the very end here. I'll just speed up the process so you don't have to watch this painstakingly slow. Okay, that is still too wet, so I'm going to stick in, we're almost there, I'm going to stick in more insulation. Alright guys, I've mixed it up into a consistency I like. I can roll it into a ball. And when you squeeze it, there will be a little bit of liquid ink, don't worry about that. As long as it doesn't stick to your hands, the clay, as long as the clay doesn't stick to your hands, and as long as it doesn't crumble, then it's the right texture. I always get questions, how do you apply it? Well, in my gnome home, on all the walls, I just take a clump of it like that, put it on the wall, and then spread it out with my fingers. I just spread it into a thin layer. You can see it spreads very easily. Once you have that thin layer all on there, then you want to set it in front of a fan and let it completely dry before you do anything else. That's all there is to that. It'll spread out pretty nice. And then, of course, let it completely dry before you paint it. Alright, one more thing I'll show you before I end the video. This is a tutorial that I'm working on right now. I'm taking a regular shoe box. These things, a pair of shoes come in. And I'm turning it into a treasure box that looks like a book. Here's one I did, a monster book. I got the idea from Harry Potter, of course. Just put my own creative spin on it. Great big teeth. But these teeth are all that clay that we just made in the kitchen sink there. So these teeth are tinfoil form, and then I covered it with the clay. The clay sticks to the tinfoil. You don't need anything else, just tinfoil. Put the clay over top. Then I stick it in the oven to dry. It takes about 30 minutes or so. The clay will turn like a lightish gray color when it's completely dry. And then you can paint it and do whatever you want with it. You can see here, I put all the clay on the sides of the box, and then I made them look like pages of a book. So that's what I'm working on now. This guy here was made in 2015, and my son absolutely loves this thing and keeps all his treasures inside of it. So yeah, you can make the sides look like paper, and then you can make big teeth and gums, and there's a tongue and little tiny teeth there. That's all that clay that we made. So it's all up to your imagination what you do with it after you make a batch. And again, I use it all the time. I absolutely love it. Now I will stick this, I'll put this into an ice cream pail and stick it into the fridge and I'll just pull it out when I need it. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you do make this homemade clay, I'd sure love to hear about it. You can post in the comments below or leave a comment on my blog. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you soon.